Hello, everyone. This is J.R. Rucker, and this is Rucker University. And tonight we have a very special guest. She is an educator as well as an up-and-coming filmmaker. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Miss Stacie McClam.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well.
Yes, we are. So, if you could tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, your educational journey, and kind of what led you to this, where you at now.
Okay, sure. So I was a teacher for 10 years. I'm from Los Angeles County, and I got interested in education because one, I was always bused to schools outside of my neighborhood. And so starting in first grade. And so I always knew as a 6-year-old riding on the bus, when it's still dark outside, something strange as to why the other kids in the neighborhood aren't on the bus with me. Like, I always wondered, why am I the only one going outside of my neighborhood? So fast forward to middle school and high school, I learned about tracking, and I just saw a lot of inequalities in the school system. And I saw that some of the classes that I was in the gifted classes because my aunt was a teacher. And so she told my mom and dad that the schools in my neighborhood did not have, high test scores. So my aunt told my parents to put me in the magnet. And so I just, yeah, like I said, noticed a lot of inequalities in high school with mostly Black and brown students not getting into advanced classes such as honors, advanced placement classes. And so that bothered me. And then I also had a counselor who was not encouraging at all and told me she left a message on my parents' answering machine actually telling me not to apply to certain colleges and universities. So I was encouraged at home, but it was at school that I had a different experience. And then also contrast that with my grandmother was a teacher in segregated Virginia. And so growing up, I remember my mom telling me a lot how much her family was respected for the simple fact that her mother was a teacher. And so that always made me think that teachers were change makers and, very helpful and esteemed professionals in the community. So I wanted to be a teacher for that reason as well. And so I went to college and did a lot of work in the community that I went to college in. And then I became a teacher. And at that point, I was very like, it's the teacher's fault, it's the system's fault. And then after I got my master's in Washington, D.C. and started working in Washington, D.C. And then I totally changed. I was teaching in D.C. Northeast. This was pre-gentrification. So it was rough. It was like 2002, 2003, 2004, very difficult environment to work in. And I had first grade. So I've taught first grade through fourth grade, but mostly first grade. And, great colleagues, always had great colleagues, very dedicated individuals, and even administration in some cases, but it was just a number of students that had just a lot of issues. It was just so much to deal with. And so I actually left DC at the end of the year and went abroad to teach in Japan. That's how bad it was. I was like, I have to get out of the US. And so taught in Japan, returned to the US after a year. And then I thought, okay, I don't want to go back to teaching. What should I do? So I thought, well, maybe I can use the law to inform public education for education reform reasons. So I went to law school. After my first year, I was kind of like, this is not me. Didn't feel like I wanted to practice. I didn't want to practice, but I was interested in the enforcement of what I thought the law could do for schools. But then after graduating, I saw that the law did not have that kind of power the way that I wanted it to in terms of making change. So I went back to the classroom, this time in Denver, because I went to law school in Denver, taught in Denver for about 3 years. And that was also an interesting place because having come from DC and seeing like neighborhoods where it looks like the kids I'm not surprised that the kids acted the way they did based on their home environment. But in Denver, it's different. It doesn't look like um, regular poverty that one would be accustomed to seeing. People, they can be in poverty and live in what you and I would think is a nice house. And so just very, they don't have ghettos, they don't have hoods necessarily. It's different level of poverty. And so there's a lot of mental health issues with first graders as well. So yeah, I've seen it all. That was such a trying experience that I was like, I have to leave the US again. Like, I literally did not know what to do. It sounds crazy, but I was like, it's too much. And at that time I was younger. So, I was more um, willing to work hard and, just suck it up. But as I got older, I'm like, this is really wearing on me. It's affecting my relationships, friends, family. And it's really, you know, I'm not living my life. I felt like I was sacrificing myself for my students. And so I went abroad and taught in Kuwait for a year, first grade. After teaching in Kuwait, came back to the US and then taught again in Los Angeles County, where I'm from. And I had first grade in both schools. And it just same thing. So across the nation, same problems, very toxic school environments. And at this point, I was like, I'm done. Like, I can't anymore. It's too much. So in 2018, I resigned at the end of the year and suffered post-traumatic stress disorder and learned about secondary traumatic stress and how teachers can unconsciously take on the stress of their students, not to be a savior, but more because they're trying to solve the problem and they can't, there's no help. So they feel powerless and helpless. There's no administrators that can help because oftentimes administrators don't know what to do either in some of these cases, which is fine. But I would just appreciate if administrators would be truthful about that and, work with teachers, be real about there being a problem. So that's a long answer, but that's my educational journey.
I think it's really important that people tell their story and also kind of break down the steps that led to them where they were or where they are. And so it looks like you really have went full circle, and you really left no stone unturned. If we look at your roots in Los Angeles to go to different parts of the world, some people have make an assessment, and it's only based on one city they've ever lived in. You worked in Kuwait. You said you went to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
You went to law school. If anyone watches this, I want them to know. I thought it was important that you state your story because I want them to know that you're not just a person who's educated in a classroom. You've really educated yourself in the world. So I think that's really awesome.
Thank you, but it's not been easy. And it's, having to change careers and oftentimes questioning, what am I doing? What is my purpose? I've invested so much time as a teacher, 10 years, and now, and then going to law school, not even practicing. It's like, what am I doing? So yeah, that's what prompted the book, me having to uh, express myself. It was like therapy for me. So I actually just started writing for myself. And then it ended up being a book. It's called School Dismissed, Walking Away from Teaching. So
And yes, so we're getting to the point where this is the meat of what I want viewers to understand is that there are people out there that are actually brave enough, bold enough to put action behind their frustration. A lot of people talk, a lot of people make comments. You actually have said, listen, I'm going to write a book, and I'm kind of walking away from what we know as the traditional education or teaching profession. Tell us when was the pivotal moment when you were like, okay, that's it.
yes, so it's actually a point in my book where I talk about a student in my class. There was a fight in my class. So as I said, I was a first grade teacher mostly. This was a first grade class, and the whole school was what I would consider to be chaotic. And so even sending the kids, walking the kids to recess was an ordeal. Morning recess and lunch recess, like I already knew was going to be issues. I'm already like trying to hype myself up and think of strategies and how am I going to, tackle this, that. And so I got the students, we finally got them safely, peacefully, somewhat into the building. And then once we got in the building, a fight broke out between two students, which was normal. And so I get them, calm that down, get all the students in the classroom, and then everyone is seated except one student. And this student, a first grader, attempted to fight me basically. Like he bucked up on me. He was upset, and I guess I can understand why. And I knew he had some issues going on, but at the same time, you have to be respectful. And that's the first time a student has, threatened me. And so, yes, it's a 6-year-old. I wasn't scared, but it was the idea that he would be disrespectful enough to me, and it made me feel like I'm like, what am I doing? Like, to think about my grandmother teaching in segregated Virginia, and then I have a Black student doing this to me, like that's so disrespectful. I I was done. And so I actually ended up crying at that moment. And I've never cried in front of a class before either. And so I got the cry out, and then I got angry. And then I went to YouTube, I typed in Emmett Till, and I paused the video when they got to the point of Emmett Till's casket. And just told the students about Emmett Till. They didn't really understand what I was talking about. And then I started telling them about my grandmother. They didn't really care, but I don't know. I just was able to express myself. And so it was that fight that I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm trying to be of service, and this system is not letting me do what I need to do. So.
Wow. The for those who are not in the know, Emmett Till, I believe in 1955, he was visiting from Chicago to Mississippi to visit his grandfather, I believe, or his uncle, and he whistled at a young white girl. Allegedly, whistled at a young white girl. Later that night, family members of the young white girl who made the claim that Emmett Till whistled at her in a store. They pulled him out of the house, beat him, and threw him in the Tallahatchie River, and he was recovered, and his body looked horrid. So to get a visual of what she saw. So this is a huge, to me, what you're doing and your movement is huge to me because of many different reasons. One, you are able to take stop everything. Right now, we're currently going through a situation where school is dismissed for health reasons, but you decided you had to put a stop to this in your life. One of the things you're also talking about is secondary traumatic stress, which is a totally pushed under the rug issue that educators must make themselves aware of. And so I, several weeks ago, purchased your book. I hope I can get this, and I'll make sure I have a picture of it after the show. But School Dismissed is a wonderful book. So not only is she an educator, someone who's went to law school, taught around the globe, wrote a book, and is working on other projects as well. So great. It's great to just hear refreshing people. It's refreshing to hear people talk about making bold moves. And I think right now in education, we need more people like you that are able to make bold moves and to dare to say something's wrong. And we can't just continue to look the other way and pretend like it's nothing wrong. So kudos to you on that, for sure. Now, as we talk about your book, and I believe it was written in 2018.
18.
18.
Yes.
there are other projects, and I know you can't share a lot, but there are other makings of other projects based on the book and pushing forward that I know you've been working tirelessly on, to get things rolling. And so, what you can tell us about some of the things you're working on? Can you give the audience a little bit more that you've worked on beyond your book?
Right. So sure. I um, thought with the book I wanted more to express myself and just what exposing some of the issues. So I thought about film for some reason because like I said, I felt like the law, it just wasn't working for me. And so I was like, how can I respectfully call people out and hold people accountable to um, what needs to be done, because some things that are allowed to happen in schools, in some schools it doesn't happen in other schools. And so why are we allowing certain students not to get services that they need, or just letting kids act a fool? Like, it's not okay. And so for some reason I thought of film. I have no film background at all, know nothing about the entertainment industry at all, so I'm just learning as I go. Kind of like you, I know you're interested in film and you have some projects. So I started an LLC called School Dismissed LLC. And 2 years ago, 2018, after I wrote the book, I hired a screenwriting coach. And it took about 8 months to get a decent rough draft of film that I have, a narrative feature called School Dismissed. I still have a lot more rough drafts to go through. This is the first decent one, but it's a story of a teacher and the student. Right now the student is a boy, but I might change the student to a girl, and it's their kind of struggles with life, the student's life and the teacher's life, and kind of shows how the administration is not necessarily helpful. And so I have that narrative, but I've put that to the back burner because I think it'll cost too much right now. But I think a documentary can be done more on a budget, more of an affordable budget for me. So I'm starting with the documentary, and the subject of that is school residency fraud. And it's basically, or so-called fraud, when a parent uses another's address who lives in a different district to send their kids to that district. So I think that's an important topic because it leads to who has access to good schools, quality education, all of the things that we know is not the same for everyone in this country. So yeah, those two projects.
Well, that's awesome. There's a lot of excitement. For full disclosure, I recently got a chance to introduce myself to Stacie, and so just at an event at USC, and instantly I could feel your passion and your desire to get your message across, not only for the project you're working on, but just moving forward. Your work ethic is tireless, and I love that you make yourself so vulnerable. I always tell people, if you have a student that's 7 feet tall and you point at the student and say, hey, one day you're going to be a basketball player in the NBA, I don't think you really had any faith. The kid's 7 feet tall. But if you're able to take something that you have no proof of what it can do and you move forward. So when you're saying, hey, I've never created a film before, I think that says something a lot about you, and it's something that I want other educators or just people in general to kind of watch your movement. It's exciting to see. It's very refreshing to see someone be vulnerable in a space where they don't have expertise, but is willing to learn. And I think a lot of times that's what stops us. And unfortunately, that could be the difference between our purpose versus what we end up doing that is not our purpose. So I love that what you're doing. And like I said, as soon as I met you, I knew, hey, she's ready.
And can I just say that um, it's like teachers, I so respect teachers in the teaching profession. And because I know so many teachers and I know that they deal with a lot and they go home and still have work to do, weekdays and weekends, there's so much to do, and there's so many students that have issues, and it's more of me wanting to, like, the children are telling us something. There's a reason why students are misbehaving, and we're not addressing those issues. And so yes, the teachers face the brunt of it, but still we're doing our students a disservice, because we're not, it's something we're doing wrong as adults if the children are acting like this. And so I think, like, it's the government, the school districts, the school boards, the state boards of education need to uh, be held accountable, because it's not okay what's going on. And people, even when you have, for example, um, visits from central office, they're always scheduled. Don't come on a scheduled day, because 2 days before, the principal's getting everybody ready, and they're having everyone in place, and there's not going to be any fights in the hallways. Come on a regular day, like, see what's really going on, see all the fights. Let the superintendent get hit by a student. Let's, like, just be real. Don't act like it's nothing, no problems going on. And so I just see with film, like, for example, with Spike Lee, when he did the documentary about the 4 little girls in Birmingham who were bombed by a church. A church was bombed. And so with that, I think it was the same month that it was released, they reopened that case. The same month. And it had been closed for decades. But just the power of that film, like, holding people accountable. Same with like Ava DuVernay and When They See Us on Netflix. Um, calling out people respectfully, like, you can't treat people like that. Like, there has to be justice. And so um, when you show people to the world through film, then they're like, oh, we can't do this because they're not going to let me get away with this. No, we're not. Like, so it's more of accountability. And yeah, so I'm kind of an educator, law, and film. I kind of want to merge those three.
And why not? Why not? No, I'm serious. Why not? I just I believe that's the formula for our new educator. Our new educator has to be versatile and may have 2 to 3 degrees to be able to function and truly be effective in today's educational climate. I love what you said about video. Right now, if it's not on video, it never happened. If
Mm.
it's in a book, for today's generation, if it's not on video, it never happened.
Mm.
Unfortunately, books don't serve the purpose it once did in society, so we have to go to the medium that people watch, particularly young people. So I agree with you 100% on that. Now, obviously, I've spoke about you glowingly. If someone wanted to follow you, get in contact with you, if they had questions, do you have any contact information that they can um, get in contact with you?
Yes, sure. So I'm Stacie McClam on all social media: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Stacie, StaciemCClam, as in Mary. And I also have a website, www.staciemcclam.com.
Awesome. And also, I'll make the those websites and those links available at the end of this interview. And so, something new I want to have for all my guests on Rucker University, these interviews, is, hey, 5 years from now, where where do you want to be, and what do you want to be doing 5 years from now? So 2025, uh, we're willing, we make it. We're there.
Yes,
We're
we will.
healthy. What
Yes.
what would you like to be doing?
Yes, I want to be creating films. So a film director, writer, producer, if I have to be, because when you're starting off, you might have to do a lot of things yourself. And so making films about education issues. I hope to have at least 3 features by then. And I would like to have work with other educators who also want to tell their story through film.
That's awesome. Well, this is the interview I've been looking forward to for a while. We become fast friends and supporters of each other on our social media platforms and the different
Mhm.
movements we're trying to produce. So thank you so much, Stacie, for coming on to Rucker University. Without a doubt, you hold true to our mantra that they made it, so you and I could as well. So
Mm.
have a great evening. I will be in touch. And remember, at Rucker University, we dare to do the impossible. Take care.
Wow. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Take care.